Welcome to a special Q&A session on industry and other related topics, including life generally in Sov-Null. We're joined today by special guest Raveneye. Raveneye was a member of the Uni for quite a while, and in his time was one of the preeminent industrialists in the PC9 Pocket. While he was in the Pocket, he was a mentor to many up-and-coming industrialists in the Uni, including myself. And he was also active in the early stages of the CFT incursion before he graduated from the Uni and moved on to FAM. So he's with us today to talk about industry, life in Sov-Null, and to answer your questions generally. Please note that today's session is being recorded. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Raveneye.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. As Alistair said, I'm Raveneye. I started playing EVE about 3 years ago. Very quickly found EVE University and started out my career back in the old high-sec campus at AMI, doing mostly level 4 missions for ISK, and then eventually got into what I really kind of wanted to do in the game, which was industry and logistical aspects of it. Started out doing a lot of salvaging for the level 4 mission fleets, accumulating minerals that way by scrapping stuff, building rigs with salvage, doing a little bit of Tech 1 production there in high sec, mostly things like hulls, kind of cruiser size hulls that people didn't want to fly all the way to Jeddah to buy, so I could charge a little bit extra there in high sec to do that. Eventually started moving out to nullsec to do planetary industry to begin with. Eventually got into reactions out there, and that's when things sort of took off financially. Initially, I was building advanced components in nullsec and actually moving those over to highsec to sell in Verge Vendor. It wasn't a very big market, but I was the only one fulfilling that need, so I could easily get 20-30% over Jeddah. So it kind of guaranteed some profit margins. Eventually, I got involved with the Uni quartermaster group, and they're responsible for moving a lot of the material around, things like ice blocks, the buyback program, fuels for the structures, and all that stuff. And that got me familiar with Uni hauling and Uni contracting and all that side of things. So at that point, I started getting into Tech 2 hull production out in PC9. Starting with frigates, destroyers, working my way up to cruisers, and then eventually jumped all the way up to marauders. I was running, still am running 5 Omega accounts, slowly built all of those accounts out to where I'm now have 15 characters that I do industry with. They're all trained in the fundamentals. I got all of those going while in PC9, and eventually moved from marauders into jump freighters. Started producing those because I could fly those back to Jeddah. I built out a jump freighter pilot. I started out with the Anshar, which is the Galente jump freighter, and eventually cross-trained over into the Rhea, which is the Caldari one, and was producing both of those and doing 150, 160 reaction slots in the industrial complex that we had put together there in ZN0. When one day CFT showed up for the first time and refed all 3 structures. And at the time I had 4 jump freighters that were in production stuck in the Rataru, along with a Tech 1 freighter that was also stuck in the Rataru. And had I canceled the jobs, I would have lost everything. And had they destroyed the station, I would have lost everything as well. In addition to that 60 billion-isk worth of jump freighters that I had laying there waiting to die, I had probably another 80 or 90 billion-isk worth of reactions going in the Tatara that had been refed as well. And at that point, Uni was not defending those structures. They really didn't even have the means to do so. And so I realized at that point that if I wanted to play like a big boy, I had to go where the big boys play. Fortunately, they did not come back for those timers. Both timers reset, and I was able to get everything out. But at that point, I started looking into my options in Sov-Null. I had known a few people in Pandemic Horde that had come out here from the Uni in the past, got into some of the conversations with them, trying to figure out what is life like in PC9 versus what life would be out in Sov-Null. And a lot of people answered a lot of questions as best they could, but I really didn't understand what I was getting into until I got out here. And I was hoping to come back and kind of talk through the process of what I went through, what kind of surprised me, what didn't surprise me, what I should have done to prepare for coming out here, what I had done, how all that worked out, and kind of answer any questions any of you have regarding either industry small scale, industry big scale, what's life like in Pandemic Horde, whatever else. So I'm going to pause. Do we have any questions yet? We're using Discord for class questions, so please throw questions at me. It's a Q&A session. All right, so because we don't have any questions, I'm going to start with some of my own. Differences in industry for PC9 versus Sov-Null. In PC9, I was generally buying everything in JITA, shipping everything from JITA to PC9. The only thing I was producing locally in PC9 was the PI from the planets there. And then I was focusing on Marauders because Marauders tend to be the most ISK per cubic meter to ship back to JITA. Since I've moved out to Sov-Null, Pandemic Horde has their own trade hub at a system out in MJ deck. There's a huge keep star there, and the Alliance works to keep it seated with all the stuff we need, but it is an open market for anyone to participate in. Generally, all the wheeling and dealing is done through there. There's ships available on contract there. There's ships available on the market out there, as well as all the modules you'd need. Generally, when they ping a fleet, any of the ships in the doctrine, you can fly into MJ, hit multi-buy, and everything will be there for you to buy. The pricing is different than JITA. Generally, things are a little bit more expensive out there, but that is where I operate primarily out of now instead of operating out of JITA. Generally, the Moon Goo, the Moon Goo is traded in Discord using some Discord ping channels. Similar to the EVE Uni buy and sell channel, we have a Discord channel for the corporation. We have one for an industry channel for Pandemic Horde, and then we have a larger PanFam market hub there. And between there, I get about 80 to 90% of my Moon Goo. There's big miners that are selling it there regularly. They'll post want to sells, and I'll just direct message them. Buy things off 5, 10, 15 billion-isk at a time. Ice, generally I'll buy compressed ice off the markets at MJ. The isotopes, The oxygen isotopes are pretty easy to get where we're at, but the other ones, the nitrogen, helium, hydrogen, all still have to come from JITA. In addition to the data cores and decryptors, I'll buy those in JITA as well. The minerals, there are certain high-sec minerals, particularly tritanium, that have to come from JITA, so I'll ship those out as compressed Veldspar, compressed moon ores for some of that stuff, to get the pyrite and mexilon. And then the null sec ores, things like noxium and morphite, I'll buy usually off corp mates right here in system, and ship it all out. I've also switched from doing a lot of Marauder production to just all of the Tech 2 hulls. I do a lot of frigates, destroyers, and cruisers now, just because before it was 2 jumps to get to JITA and the jump freighter. Now I'm working so close to MJ that I can fly a jump freighter back and forth 3 times in the course of the 10 minutes it takes for the sinos to expire. And the fuel cost to go to MJ is about 1/5 of the fuel cost it used to take me to go to JITA. So fuel's a lot cheaper. It's a lot easier to move things in bulk. Anyone have any questions yet? I still see empty questions in the channel.
I will have many questions, but want to give you an opportunity to answer first.
Sorry, go ahead, Scooter.
Oh no, I was saying I will have questions, but I don't want to ask questions that he's already planning to answer first.
Are you offering a general buyback program, or are you just buying things off the MJ market that you need for your production? So this is from the class questions. Generally, similar to Uni, there's a lot of corps that run buyback programs in MJ and in the surrounding areas. Our corporation does buyback for our members on a lot of the moon minerals and so forth. I don't do a general buyback. I tend to focus on specifically what things I need, which are, moon goo, ice, minerals, data cores. But a lot of the people that do run those buybacks will then turn around and sell those items in Discord. You'll see the same name 2, 3, 4 times a week posting a gigantic list of 100 billion-esque worth of stuff that they're selling that came out of their buyback program. So they're making their cut that way. I just haven't, I could get a little cheaper if I were going directly to do a buyback, but I don't want to try and compete with all those guys. And usually that involves a lot more work trying to deal with all the other random tidbits that they find and looting things. So I just focus on the production that I do. Is there a question in voice?
I'll have some questions later on. I really want to just hear more of how you're developing and building your manufacturing. But my other questions will be a bit more specific after.
Yes, I do my own Tech 2 invention. When you've got 15 characters, one of the things you can do is specialize a lot of them. And very early on, I picked one of my characters and queued up all of the science skills to level 5. Within, a couple of months, I had, level 3s and level 4s where I felt comfortable doing a lot of my own invention. Funny thing about EVE is you play it enough years, those skill queues, as long as they are, will get completed. And now that scientist is a perfect scientist at level 5s all around. Since I've gone from Marauders down into smaller hulls, I've had to do a lot more inventions. So I've had to train several other characters up, at least to level 3s and level 4s, where I can feel like I can, add to that capacity to get up my blueprint collection. But right now I've got a big spreadsheet that keeps track of everything, and I've got literally hundreds of copies of all of the Tech 2 hulls at this point. As far as developing industry, getting started from scratch, the first thing I recommend and the first thing I've trained on all of my alts is planetary industry. I know Wea teaches a really good course in that every couple of weeks or so. I think he taught one yesterday. It's important because it's bulky and hard to move around. So being able to produce it locally helps tremendously. If you're ever wondering what you should set up first in PI, I always recommend the materials that are required for fuel blocks, because everyone needs fuel blocks everywhere. They're required for reactions and they're required for structures. So having those locally to be able to produce fuel blocks helps people a lot. From there, Tech 1, people recommend Tech 1 because it's easy. The problem with Tech 1 is that everyone can do it, so it's not very profitable. It's fine to tinker with, but really I didn't start making money until I got into reactions. And getting into reactions means getting out of high sec space. So once you kind of get a library of composite reactions, you can at least start working moon goo up into composites. Also working with other people. Finding good people to work with. Industry in EVE is fundamentally a PvP activity. If you don't go into it with a PvP mindset, other people who know it is a PvP activity will beat you up and destroy you just the same way as if it were PvP in space. There's only a finite amount of markets out there, and you're competing with the other industrialists for those markets. Generally, what I try to do is focus on underserved markets. So just because a market is popular doesn't mean that there's money to be had there, because lots of people know it's there and lots of people can be participating in it. Similarly, on the other end of the spectrum, where there's ships that nobody ever buys, there's no real profit to be made there, because generally there's ships or modules that somebody built 2 years ago because they thought they could make money on it, and have been listed on the market ever since, and they're just trying to get their ISK back at this point. So on the two extremes, you can find that you might struggle with competition a lot, but sort of in the middle, and this is what I've really seen out in the MJ market, there's a lot of those things that people need. They maybe sell 1 or 2 or 3 of them a day, but if I can do that across 40 or 50 different hulls, I can make a lot of that money in the mid-sized stuff. What was the question? Where was I going with all that? So getting to work with other people in PvP, helping them do their industry by adding additional slots into what they're doing. That full Tech 2 stack, yeah, it's profitable, but it requires a lot of skills, right? You got to have your science skills to do your invention. You got to have your reaction skills to do your reactions. You got to have your PI to do the planetary industry for the fuel blocks. In addition to the manufacturing skills and the advanced hull skills, if you're doing Tech 2 hulls. All that requires a huge upfront investment of both ISK and skill points. So if you can work with somebody who's already got a lot of those skills, that can mentor you, teach you, help them fill in additional capacity where they're bottlenecked, that can help, get you into a profitable adventure before you're actually able to do it all yourself end to end.
Raven, I've got a couple of questions, if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
Good to see you again. So, one, what I find it's causing me a lot of the most investment. I was wondering where you buy either copies is, just looking at owning the blueprints and getting them up in material and time efficiency takes a lot of time. So I bought all the blueprints because I'm dipping my toe into doing frigates first and then destroyers, right? But the amount of time to get those up is a lot of time. So the question for me with you was, when you first started out, did you make the investment in your own blueprints and then get those up in time and material efficiency? Or did you buy copies off of, or do you still buy copies for some of the larger ships like Marauders or, those types of things, to where, those blueprints go for $1 billion ISK, right? And I can get copies of some things off of from the corporation, from EVE University, but they don't have everything. And I was wondering how you do that when you look at some of the larger ships that you make, and whether or not it's a good investment, and the smaller ones to buy your own blueprints and start generating your own copies with the amount of time it takes to build those up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. First off, use the Uni BPO library. It is an incredible resource. I know that a lot of the BPOs are in high sec, which means slower copy times. But definitely, if you're even thinking of starting getting into industry, at least train somebody to where they've got 4 or 5 research slots, or maybe even 8 or 9 if you want to get a little bit busy, and just keep those busy. Start making copies of everything, every module, every frigate, every destroyer, and just kind of work your way up. You don't need a lot, do it one day at a time, where, you're not using that blueprint for more than one day as per the rules. But just start building out that copy library. And then as you use copies, start replacing them. And as you use copies a lot, those are the BPOs that you want to buy. When you do start buying BPOs, especially if you get into Tech 2 research, realize that if you're doing Tech 2 invention, ME and TE doesn't matter at all. It only matters when you're doing the Tech 1 manufacturing. So like the battleships, when I was doing Marauders, first I was using the Uni blueprint, and every 2 days you'd see my name on the history for the Raven, crunching out a 5-run copy of that, because that's what I could do in 24 hours. And so I built out a collection of those until I got to the point where, hey, I need more. And that's when I bought my own BPO of the Raven. Yeah, you're right, it's $1 billion. But then I could make a ton of copies nonstop out in nullsec, where you can make them faster, at 0.0. And then I can use those 0.0 copies to do my invention, and keep the ones that I had made off the Uni library for the Tech 1 ships. And so that way you can kind of build up your library off your own BPO, and then sort of slicing in, I'll research a few points here, one more point here, and then of course you got to just bite the bullet on that last point. Also do your research out in nullsec at the, New Republic, if that station's still there.
Yep,
New Republic Research Facility. It's about twice as fast as doing it in high sec, which makes a huge difference when you're talking 15 days instead of 30. TE, time efficiency, I usually try to get things up at least to 12, 14, 16, just because those first few steps are cheap and easy to do. But I think even my Apocalypse blueprint, which I've used forever to do everything, is still only at 18 TE. It's a lot less important to get that maxed out, but ME is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have another character that I trained up to just do nothing but, blueprint, TE and ME, so that I'm not using my main for it, right? Because I'm using my main for the other types of stuff that I want to keep as much science slots open or job slots or manufacturing slots, and using it to actually make stuff. So I just have another character that's a PI character that I trained up to do the ship stuff, because over time I'll go, okay, I'm just going to do this when it's a some of them are like 35-day trains, right? And I'll just start it and let it sit there and do it until it comes up. The other question I had for you was not on invention, but on, do you have any characters that are actually making data cores? Or, can you do that with alpha accounts to where you can kick off a whole bunch or have them? Because most of that stuff's done in HiSec. And I can't keep, I can't move my characters back and forth between HiSec every day or every couple of days to do data cores. And is there a way to actually farm data cores that makes sense?
A long, long time ago, I thought it made sense to go out and do research agents and do all that hassle, but I will tell you it's not worth it. It's just too much time running around and dealing with stuff. Let's see.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I fly into Jita and throw a bunch of ISK on the table. Really, the way to farm data cores is doing the faction warfare for the loyalty points and buying them with that. And there are a lot of people that enjoy that content way more than I do, so I just buy the proceeds of their efforts.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that and the use of alpha characters and all the stuff that you do. If you have anything that you can't have an alpha and omega logged on at the same time, but I was thinking, are there things alpha characters that can do for industry that you can make a bunch of them that are just churning? And the only thing I could find that I thought they could do was data cores.
Yeah, when I first started doing multiple accounts, I started up 4 alpha accounts, and I just used the alpha accounts to train the first 5 million skill points until the skill points ran out. I do my dailies on them so that I get that extra unallocated skill points. Which, by the way, if you leave the blue goo in unclaimed, it doesn't count towards your 5 million. But if you have, in the unclaimed items in the lower left corner, they kind of took that away. They shortened that so that you have to claim it after 7 days, but it used to be 3 months that you could hold that stuff down there. Yeah, but once they got to 5 million on a couple of characters each, it was time to go Omega and actually put them to work doing useful stuff. And then it was straight to PI and then reactions thereafter.
And do you use any of the tools? So Alistair, God love him, he actually did a config file for all of RavWorks that shows all of our stations and bonuses and everything else that people can download and upload, right? But do you use any tools like RavWorks for checking profitability or for making sure that you're, that the stuff, the use of the bonuses and everything else is working for the things that you're doing?
Yeah, tools. Funny thing about tools. First of all, yeah, the RavWorks, EVISC per hour, GEVE assets, Janus for appraisals. All of those are good tools to use. I will tell you the most valuable one that I've got right now is Excel. And I tried messing with the plugin, but it was too slow. So I haven't been using the plugin. I've just been straight up using Excel. When it comes to using tools, there's sort of 4 levels of evolution that players go through. The first is when you don't know the tool exists and you're just kind of hovering over the tooltips in the industry and you see the number on the right's bigger than the number on the left. Therefore, it's profitable, right? The second kind of evolution is when you start discovering these tools, finding them out there, and just start to use them. You start to get a lot of insights that the game UI doesn't provide. Like the example you gave, RavWorks, very great tool, and I was using it a lot in PC9 when I was doing the industry there. I used the little profitability screen because I had a fairly short list of things that I was making each day. The sort of third evolution, once you know these tools exist, is really understanding all their features. Like what you were saying with RavWorks, getting all of the structures set up right, so it's not just giving you numbers, but it's giving giving you very accurate numbers for what you're trying to do. And that's what I was doing when I was building the Marauders and Jump Freighters. Is I'd just look at that each day, a couple times a week, and see, kind of my target ISK per hour that I wanted to get out of there. And if Paladins were dropping below 50,000 ISK per hour into like the 20 or 30 range, I'd kind of slow production on those and try to focus effort on other things until the price came back. And I kind of used that as a price gauge to say, where is the market at? And I had gotten to the point where I had enough ISK that, if the profitability on Paladins goes down, it's a bad market cycle. So I just stopped selling. And sometimes I'd have 5, 10, 15 of these things stacked up at JITA waiting for the price to recover. And then when that profitability number came back, I knew that, okay, that's the green light to start selling again. Same thing with Jump Freighters. That was a really big indicator that I used to jump in and out of Jump Freighter markets in terms of, when's the right time to sell or when's the right time to hold. That Jump Freighters are a whole big long topic that I've made some bad decisions along the way there, but the Marauders were a lot more consistent because the volume there is a lot higher. The fourth evolution, though, is when you start looking at the tools and realizing what they aren't telling you. And this is when you start saying, okay, can I start to glean information out of the system that I can't get from the tools? Because everybody's using the tools. All of your competition is seeing the same thing that you are if you're looking at the tools. And if you go into EVE ISK per hour, for example, and you look at the top ISK per hour item when you do your assessment there, it's almost guaranteed that 3 days from now that item won't be profitable because everyone sees that exact same thing and they chase it. They build way too many of them and they crash the market. And there's a very rapid price decline that kicks in thereafter, and you have to wait for the whole cycle to start over again. And that's sort of the top tier, is when you start seeing the things in the market that are not shown in the tools. One of the problems I faced when I came out to MJ is that RavWorks prices everything at JITA prices, and there's no way to change that. I'm not buying it. Most of what I'm buying is not in JITA, and most of what I'm selling isn't in JITA. And so I had to deal with, okay, it's this great tool that I don't have access to anymore. And I decided to invest a lot of time when I moved out to Sov-Null in my spreadsheets. I think I put in like 80 to 100 hours, starting completely over from scratch with my Excel spreadsheet. It got to a point where I'm very happy with it now. One of the tricks I do is I go into Janus, and I have a Janus link for like 500 items, volume 1 each. And if you look at the Janus screen, there's a button in the upper left corner of the table that copies all of that onto the clipboard, and I can paste that right into Excel. And now I have pricing data out of JITA. There's also, if you've ever noticed in Janus, where it says JITA 4.4, if you scroll down, there's also an MJ-5. That's the station that I do my trading out of. So I can repeat that process and pull accurate information for the MJ market that I'm operating out of. And that's playing into all the equations when I start to look at hulls, which hulls, what prices they're at, what profitability they are. And now I can kind of, my spreadsheet's set up so that it's picking prices for moon goo at Jita buy versus Jita split, because if I can source it in MJ, I can probably get the moon goo at Jita buy, but if I source it at Jita, I have to pay closer to Jita split for it. So I can kind of fine tune some of that stuff to get a more accurate representation of what I really am paying to make this stuff. And then that trickles through to, profitability on my side.
Thank you. Sorry, I had so many questions, but wanted to take the opportunity to ask them.
No, that's the point here. And my worst loss. Well, I was making jump freighters. I eventually got, I told you about the 4 jump freighters that were stuck in that Ritaru. I finally got them out of PC9. I shipped them to Jita. I listed them there for about 14 billion each. The price started to slide on it. I didn't need the ISK super bad, so I just kind of left them up. They timed out at 3 months when the announcement came that the jump freighters, the cost of the jump freighters were going to be less material. So the prices have dropped on those. So probably I haven't really sold all of them yet. At this point, I've only got 1 Rhea listed on the market. I think I got another Rhea and Anchar over there in Jita. But just, part of the problem is having, 30, 40, 50 billion ISK tied up for months at a time that I can't use to cycle into other projects.
You're probably seeing a jump in the price for Nomads with the new Lancers that are coming out.
Yeah, Nomads are the one I can't do yet. I can't do the Amar yet. I started to cross-train into that, but then, chaos hit with CFT, and I really couldn't do jump freighters anymore. Since I've moved out to MJ, I thought I'd be getting into capital production fairly quickly, but I postponed it. I still haven't done any caps out here yet. Any other questions about industry specifically, or perhaps life in Sovereign Null? What we do out here, what things are like, how things are set up?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, have you found the bonuses far better in Null than low-sec?
So you said the bonuses?
Sorry, the reductions in the regional reductions in null-sec. In low-sec and null-sec, you get extra bonuses on each of the Soyatus, Tataras, whatever.
Well, before in PC9, it's null-sec, but it's NPC null-sec. So the bonuses are all pretty much the same between NPC and Sov-Null. Working out of a Sotoyo is nice just because I don't have to haul stuff from point A to point B. There's the Tatara is on grid with the Sotoya, so I do the reactions in the Tatara, and then the Sotoyo, I get to do all the research, the component construction and the Tech 1 construction, as well as the final Tech 2 hull production, all in the same thing. I don't have to move the materials back and forth, which it just is a huge convenience factor. I've got a freighter on grid to move that, but I don't have to. It's just one step into another.
What was the biggest surprise when you moved out to Sov-Null?
It's, there was sort of this moment like walking into one of the big cathedrals, showing up at MJ and just seeing Titans and super carriers and faxes all just parked outside of MJ, and all the activity that was going on there. You had, routinely, almost all day, there's some Sino lit, sometimes as many as 3 or 4 Sinos lit with things coming in and out. Just the level of activity that's happening out here. Some of the other things is just how active the PvP scene is. Even though I'm in a quiet rented system where there's, I'd say, maybe about half the traffic that PC9 gets, so it's pretty quiet, even by your standards. But there's always pings going out. I've done 2 home defense fleets already today. There's also been a Strat-Op ping today, 3 or 4 new bean fleets pinged. There's moons popping all the time. I don't do the mining myself, but I see the pings on them all weekend long. There's just a lot of activities that you can jump into and get going right away. It's also interesting to see all of the infrastructure that's built out. All of the services are available, right? EVE Uni has hauling service. Pandemic Horde has about 6 or 7 different hauling services, all catering to whether you're moving things from JITA out or whether you're doing things in nullsec station to station. There's a whole marketplace with several of them listed with different prices and different options and different, some people will move stuff in blockade runners right away. The big ones, Bean Freight, they're moving things from JITA to MJ at 300 ISK per cubic meter plus 1% of collateral, which if you compare that to moving things to and from PC9, it's very similar in price, even though it's like 4 jumps to get from MJ all the way to JITA. And the side of JITA that we come in on, it's still like 8 or 9 jumps through HiSec to get into JITA itself. The other stuff that surprised me is just how many people here just know the roles, right? EVE Uni, it's a new bro organization, and there's a lot of hand-holding that goes on here. But when you get out in Sov-Null, when they ping a Strat-Op, people jump in, they know what ships they're flying. All they have to do is say doctrine, what the doctrine is. It's a Sov-Null doctrine. Everyone knows what ship they're getting into. They know how to organize their channels. So very quickly, the fleets are getting organized and undocking. It took me, a few fleets. It was shocking really to me how quickly I was able to adapt to everything that was going on. The first fleet I went on was an utter embarrassment because they said, here's the destination, free burn there. And I did about 3 jumps and realized I was 8 jumps away from the rest of the fleet, and I had no idea why. By the end of the fleet, I had figured out that there's an option under the autopilot in the upper left-hand corner, this little feature for use jump gates, which includes the Ansiblex network that shortens a lot of those jumps getting to and from. I didn't know. So I very quickly got lost and was completely useless in the fleet. 2 fleets later, I'd figured it all out and was doing fine. So that's really the thing on the fleets. You can't be afraid. Just go show up. You'll figure it out. They also have a lot of good support for new bros. They have what we call the New Bean Initiative. Most of the Strat-Op fleets have somebody who's sitting in a separate channel solely for the purpose of being able to talk new beans through what's going on, what they should be doing, asking questions about, how do things work? Why are they doing this way? What should I be training into? Whatever questions you want, they'll have a new bean caretaker down there to help people out. So even though there's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff, there's also a handful of new people working their way through the system, learning the ways of what's going on.
That's a great segue for a couple of my questions. So I was looking, Sov-Null is something that I'm definitely interested in long term, and was trying to get a sense of what to be training into, maybe in terms of doctrines or just in terms of general skill sets or that sort of thing to make that happen. So when I was looking at just sort of like Pandemic Horde corporation recruitments, it was all, basically everything was, all right, expectations, you have at least one alt that can fly a fax, right? It's the incredibly high power, high level things. What are the entry points, either for Pandemic specifically or kind of in general, for like newbie contacts?
Wait, there are Horde corps besides Bosa that require that much?
It seemed to be. Maybe the posts were out of date, but like I think I saw 10 recruitment posts and 8 of them had like we expect it to either be the case already or that you're going to inject into them really quickly.
Are you talking about Pandemic Horde or Pandemic Legion?
I may be talking about the wrong one. I'm not sure which one I was looking at the time.
Okay, that sounds more like a PL thing. I'm in Pandemic Legion, he's in Pandemic Horde, which tends to accept people at all levels.
And what's the, like, is that a concentric circle thing, or what's the distinction? One's an alliance, one's a corp?
Pandemic Legion is an older alliance. There are 2 separate alliances with separate command structures. Basically, Horde is the younger brother that has gotten a lot more members.
Okay, so they don't directly, one isn't part of the organization of another, they're just
Right.
kind of partners.
Yeah, that's basically.
Yeah, generally there's 3 ways into Pandemic Horde. The first way is to be part of a corporation that joins as a corporation into the alliance. Don't really know anything about that process, so I'll just leave it at that. The second way is to kind of come in through the front door. And that is, you go on to the chat channel, in-game chat, called Join Horde, spelt like you'd expect, Join Horde, Horde. And there's a big message of the day in there that kind of talks through initial steps. Basically, you apply to Pandemic Horde Inc., which is our open introductory corporation. And I think the rule is basically if you haven't gotten kicked out of Pandemic Horde in the past, they invite you right away. There's no requirements at all to join into Pandemic Horde Inc. That gets you access to a lot of the forums, the Discord, a lot of the people that, the Mumble. You can start seeing the pings for the different fleets and being able to participate in that. After 3 months, you can apply from Pandemic Horde into the Blessed Beans. Blessed Beans is sort of the default corporation for members wanting to join Horde, but it's an ESI gated corporation. ESI is the API interface that we use to do GEVE assets or ISK per hour or any of these other tools where you have to authenticate. But basically what these ESI gated corporations do is they'll force you to authenticate on a website as part of the application process, and they'll look over all of your game data, right? They'll look at your wallet transactions. They'll look at what assets you have, where those assets are located. They'll look at your EVE mails. They'll look at your kill boards. Basically anything you've done to figure out whether you're trustworthy or telling a consistent story. If you say, "Oh, I'm a brand new character and I don't know anybody in the game," and you just received 10 billion ISK from Goon leadership, you might be a spy. They're looking for things like that to figure out what's going on. The ESI gated corps will also maintain that access while you're a member to ensure that you're following rules. You're not killing things you shouldn't be killing. You're not mining places you shouldn't be mining, stuff like that. There are about 75 different ESI gated corps that are a member of Pandemic Horde. And the third way to get into Pandemic Horde, which is kind of the way I got in, was to apply directly to one of those ESI gated corps and go through the ESI gate check basically right away before you even move out to Horde space. The different 75 different corps all have their own personality. Some of them are orientated towards different languages, Portuguese or Korean or
Vietnamese.
Whatever. Some of them are very high-level PvP oriented, and they expect you to have 40 million skill points and be trained in these 4 doctrines. Some of them are very casual and new bro friendly. Some of them are more industrial in nature. The one I'm in is very industrial in nature. And in order to support that activity, they maintain a set of structures, and those structures are all fitted in rented space that we have access to as corp members. So definitely, before you even think of moving to Sov-Null, experience as much of the stuff as you can in EVE Uni so you know the content that you enjoy and you can apply towards a corporation that focuses on that and will help you, do what you're trying to do. Some of the corps are really small. They don't have space. They don't have stations. They just operate out of the central stations that the Alliance maintains. Does that kind of give you a little bit of introduction? I can keep going on that topic too.
Yeah, when I moved out to Sov-Null back at the end of 2019, I think I left EVE Uni a bit too soon.
Okay.
So keep that in mind.
And yes, it does. Thank you. By the way, that's tremendously helpful.
I was in Pandemic Horde for 2 years, so I've seen some of the same things that he has, but not as recently as him.
And how long were you in EVE Uni, may I ask? Or specifically like
6
PCMA?
months.
Okay. And so in saying that some corps don't, I guess you have kind of answered the question, but it sounds like many of the corps have their own sort of dedicated systems and structures and that sort of thing. Like within the PanFam area, corps are going to be localized.
Yeah, so there's 4 types of space in Pandemic Horde broader territory. The first is the core systems. These are the open systems. This is MJ and about 4 or 5 other systems nearby. As soon as you join Pandemic Horde Inc., you have access to only those 5 systems. That's the only place you can set up PI or do industry or anything like that. Now they have everything you'd need. They have, different Ritarus set up. They have multiple Tech 2 Tataras to do reactions, and there are Athenors out there doing moon pulls that you can participate in, but it's crowded space because it's open space. Once you transition into an ESI gated corporation, there is also ESI space. And I think that's something like 10 or 15 additional systems that you gain access to that are still Alliance systems. And you can operate out of any of those systems. Beyond the ESI gated territory, there's rented space. And this is most of the space that Horde controls, where individual corporations will pay billions of ISK per month for exclusive access to that system. It's not that you aren't allowed to go there, it's that you're not allowed to, quote unquote, loiter is the official rule. Don't loiter in rented systems. So if you're just passing through, that's fine. Or if you're doing a roam and you're looking for content, and you're flying through, that's fine. But if you want to do ratting or moon mining, anomaly mining, combat anomalies, any of those, even the special events sites, all of those belong to the people that have rented that system. And even though that may sound exclusionary, the reality is that the corps that are renting those systems are paying a lot, so they're trying to extract as much ISK as they can out of that, which means they're eager to bring new members in to help mine all those moons, to help hit all those combat sites and pay the taxes that help fund that rental. So it motivates Horde members to extract as much ISK as they can out of the systems that we hold.
And a lot of those systems wouldn't be used anyway if they weren't rented because of location issues.
Yeah, exactly. But if you know that nobody else is going to compete with you for the system cost index, you can put down your own Tatara there and start running your own reactions, for example. But because it's in rented space, it gets the protection of the strategic operations from the corporation if ever it came under attack.
And are those kind of territorial borders enforced through game mechanics, like only particular corps can use the jump gates and that sort of thing, or is it more on the policy side that like don't do it or you'll maybe be booted from corp or that sort of thing?
Yeah, there you get a Discord message saying stop doing this or you'll be removed.
Okay, so people all literally have access to them. It's just that they are meant to know what they should do and what they shouldn't.
Exactly. And usually it starts with a friendly hello and local from the people that are renting, and they'll politely remind you of the rules, and then you kind of move on if you're up to no good. But that's part of the ESI gated aspect of it. If somebody is someplace doing something they shouldn't, mining moons that don't belong to them, you can go check their ESI data to see what moons have they been mining off of. And if turns out they've been, if they made one mistake, it's not a problem. You correct the behavior. But if they're systemically being warned and they don't care, then they quickly find themselves kicked out. The fourth type of space I wanted to mention is allied space. And there are other alliances that are blue to Horde, right? Pandemic Legion.
That's where you find people like me.
Yep, Pandemic Legion, Fraternity, Northern Coalition. They are all blue to us, but basically, we'll help to defend their territory if attacked, but really, you're just passing through, getting from point A to point B if you're in their space, or you accidentally filamented into their area and you're quickly moving out and not causing any trouble.
It gives you an area to run 10-10 escalations and things, because you're allowed to, when you're ESI gated, you're allowed to go into those areas to do 10-10s or the escalations, which is real handy.
Okay, because that's essentially content only you can do anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
The general policy is that if the people can ask for proof that you're running a 10-10, such as like a screenshot of specific rats or something.
That can happen, yeah.
Okay.
You've got the escalation with the character that's got it, so you can screenshot or just window shot that bit.
And if so, would you recommend? This is maybe too broad of a question to have an actual answer, but would you recommend that somebody who wanted to approach this should go into Pandemic Horde Inc. to with, and then be there for maybe like a few months, and then start looking at the ESI gated ones? Or if somebody's comfortable with ESI disclosure and thinks it might have the skill set, like even a new bro, right? I'm like 15 million skill points.
Well, EVE Uni requires the same ESI access.
Okay. Not to the degree that Horde does. But I'd recommend what I did, which is I have 15 characters. I picked one of them that was not very significant. I put that one character in PHI, and that gave me access to start reading through all the literature on the rules and how things were structured. And it took me to a list of the ESI gated corporations, and then I could go through and look at all of them and what their ethos was, what their focuses were, what their requirements were, and start talking to the people in those ESI gated corporations And while my main character and all the other big industrial characters were still in PC9 burning off stockpiles, I was able to at least interview with some people because, you know, they want to talk to you and make sure you're not a complete jerk and that you understand kind of how things are run and that your interests are aligned and things like that before you even put in an application.
Nobody told me you had to not be a jerk. It's a pretty important requirement.
Yeah. Sorry, Seamus asked on the questions channel, what is the current policy on ship handouts for strat ops? Are members supposed to buy them on their own off the market contracts and then get SRP when they're lost, or are they loaned out like the Uni does, or does this vary from corp to corp? Generally, when you show up to a strat op, you are going to buy your own ship. You have your own fleet of ships eventually that you can fly all ready to go, so that when they ping 5 minutes later, we can be on docking because you just jump in the ship that you own. You know it's all geared up and repaired since the last time. You know you can fly it. There isn't the hour-long process of who can fly this, who can fly that goes on EVE Uni. The exception to that is the Nubro ships. There are some NBI ships that are like tackle, vigils for target painting, things like that are super easy to fly. They're, 2 million, 3 million-esque ships, so they barely cost anything. Those can be handed out by caretakers or fleet command, but you want to get that done quickly because we don't waste a lot of time getting the fleet undocked. That's where, coming out to Horde with a big pile of ISK and a lot of ISK making capabilities meant that I could quickly buy up the ships that I use. The question was asked earlier about skill sets. What skills should you be training? If you want to fly in the big strat ops, there are doctrines out there. Technically, they're operational security, but you can very quickly go out on the kill boards for any of these big battles and look at the fits on them. Copy those fits into game and see what they're doing. What I would recommend is probably Amar Cruisers 5. That's a big one. We fly Zealots. What I discovered, Caldari Cruiser 5 is another one. Caldari Logistic or Caldari Frigates 5. That'll get you into a lot of the Tech 2 ships that get flown regularly.
And either recon ships is a good Tech 2 ship to train into for, or if Sleipnirs are a bit much for you. Because every shield doctrine needs Hugens.
Yeah. I had a Paladin pilot that I was using for level 4 missions. And I use him for the strat ops. What I discovered was, all these different DPS doctrines were 2 to 3 months to train into, even for this guy that could fly a Marauder. But I instead trained into the logistics cruisers. And by training into the Guardian and the Basilisk, I had 2 cruisers that get flown on nearly every doctrine. They always play a major role. The 2 things that every fleet commander says the most frequently are, warp, 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 jump, 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 and I need more Logi. Can I get more Logi? Please get on Logi if you can fly Logi. So if you're looking at being extremely useful and skill point efficient, so train into the Basilisk and the Guardian and check the EVE Uni Logi pyramid training. There's the pyramid skill training thing in the wiki that I can't remember where it's at now. Everyone loves you if you fly Logi. Especially that guy that gets primaried and he's watching all of his shields evaporate and he's watching all of his armor evaporate and thinking that the night's over for him, and then all of a sudden the reps come. They love you.
Oh yeah, I was that guy in a fleet recently. I was very happy that we had Logi around, especially since Bargists are not cheap.
So Logi is typically, I mean, I think this is a game mechanic question, so maybe it's a stupid one, but Logi is typically going to cap out at T2 cruisers. Like other people might be flying, you know, big T2 battleships or that sort of thing, but your Logi is still going to be T2 cruisers.
Yeah, there isn't any bigger Logi unless you're Nesters or Faxes, and you can't always drop a Fax.
Nesters are like 2 billion to start, so they're really not used very often. And faxes are capital ships, so generally you don't see a fax on grid unless it's either a full paladin fleet or we're putting dreadnoughts. So it's only the nullsec, big nullsec type battles where we're looking to blow up a couple 100 billion-esque.
And in terms of, maybe this will be specific to the corps, but in terms of the kind of response fleets or smaller scale stratops, what size of ship is commonly being flown? Are there like thorax fleets going out, or is everything kind of bigger than that?
It depends. Most of the home defense quick response fleets are Harpies, right? Tech 2 Caldari frigates. Because a lot of it depends on who's kind of wandering through your system, because it's like
It also depends on what the FC likes.
Okay.
Yeah, but smaller ships are the general purpose workhorse. No, big battleship fleets are just too much to throw around all day. You don't get any kills because people just stay away from you and can easily escape.
Okay, so having like frigates at 5-4 is still,
Yeah.
you're going to be able to contribute.
Yeah, and there's always a place for interceptors and tackle frigates.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing that you can train into fairly quickly is the dictors, the interdictors, like the Saber and Eurus and Flycatcher that can pop bubbles, open up bubbles. It's always good to have a few of those to be able to deploy strategically.
Okay.
But yeah, generally, if it's a small fleet kind of wandering through system, they'll call frigates, Tech 2 frigates, Caldari frigates to go after them. If it's an ESS attack, on a encounter surveillance system, those you have to be in a cruiser or larger to slide the gate. So generally, they'll take Tech 1 cruisers for that. When it's a bigger presence, like a big Blops fleet, they might call for Siltnirs, which are the Tech 2 battle cruisers for Minmatar. Yeah.
And in terms of the actual space, so you mentioned, it's going to be pretty quiet. Is in terms of hostile people, of course. So if anyone on the channel is familiar with this, for just like exploration, looking for gas sites, that sort of thing, that's one of the things that I enjoy quite a lot. Do you have a lot of freedom there, or are you going to be pretty limited to which systems your corp actually has access to?
Yeah, there you've got to stick to the space. You're not allowed in the renter system unless you're renting that. You can always go ninja stuff in enemy territory as much as you want. You can certainly dive into whatever wormhole pops your way, but you need to stay out of the rented system unless you're in a corp that owns that system, or stick to the ESI gated systems, the central system, all those.
Okay.
There is about 40 to 50 ASI gated systems and about 40 ungated systems but they're well away over.
Oh, so are the ASI gated systems? That's anyone who's in an ASI gated corp has access to those. That's not like, this corp has 5 of those and this corp has 6 of those.
No, those are renters. Renters are different to ASI gated.
Got it.
Renters have specific systems, but ESI gated space in Horde is available for anyone with an ESI gated corp.
Okay.
Pandemic Horde does have an alliance-wide SIG for you said you like to huff gas in wormholes?
Yes. Not wormholes. Nullsec gas.
Okay. Yeah. It used to be wormhole focused. I don't know what it is today since I'm not in Horde anymore. I was actually one of the original members.
Okay.
I would say you'd find gas not that common inside nullsec. I don't see it that often. The wormholes are the place to get it.
Yeah, it's just maybe like a third or a quarter of the ISK per hour. I currently, in the pocket and the surrounding systems, will sort of do rounds every couple of hours sort of thing. So, maybe you're going to find 1 or 2 of them per day. Not a primary activity, but just curious what that would look like in Sov-Null.
Good ISK for the Huffing.
Yeah. And I think Troy asked a question of... I'm sorry, I've missed. I think it was Gregorin who said you felt like you left a little bit early, and Troy was wondering why that was.
Well, before I moved to Sov-Null, I was in a high-class wormhole corp for a month, but then or so until the leadership quit playing and it disbanded. So I decided to try out Sov-Null. The main thing that I think I wasn't prepared for outside of EVE Uni was that I thought that I should have used EVE Uni's opportunities to develop a bit more starting wealth to use to spin up the kind of ships that I should have been flying, since I was basically trying, at the time, I was basically stuck flying Confessor and hoping that I had a gas clouds to harvest, and I couldn't really afford the kind of ships that the corp I joined was regularly flying.
And if this isn't too broad, what kind of scale, like how many zeros are we talking about where you feel like it would be sort of a comfortable move?
Well, the most expensive ship I was able to fly at the time was like 300 or 400, and I feel like I should have been able to replace that a couple times over, as well as buy a couple different types of ships. Like one time we had a fleet where we were going to be flying Nightmares, which I couldn't fly at all, and let alone afford.
Okay, so billions is a reasonable number. It's not necessarily that we need to be talking about like tens of billions or
for
hundreds.
Pandemic Horde, which I joined after that corp died, that was not quite that expensive.
Okay.
Like Pandemic Horde, if that particular issue is you can fly in most fleets with just a Crucifier or a Vigil. So, like, I had a kind of weird route into Pandemic Horde because I wanted to join, after that Wormhole Corp died, a specific corporation that had just moved into Pandemic Horde, and I joined Pandemic Horde Inc. while I was already talking to the recruiters of this other corporation that was a member, which is sort of halfway between the two of the three ways that Raveneye described for how to get into Horde.
Yeah, they do pay ship replacement SRP when you lose the ship, which helps defer when things break. But in terms of building out your stable of, when they call this doctrine, I grab this ship. When I call that doctrine, I grab that ship. Usually every doctrine has smaller support ships, all the way down to tackle or target painters or webbers or things like that can be, a target painter increases the DPS of all of the people, which is why they tend to get targeted first. They die quick, but that's several seconds that they're picking you off the field while they take losses from our side. So
Yeah, Horde has the most generous SRP program of any corp that I've flown with. Like, it's not quite as... It doesn't cover fun roams as much as EVE Unis, but the payouts that when I was in EVE Uni weren't nearly as good as Horde's SRP payouts.
Well, and it's not often you actually lose ships either. I've been trying to get on every strat op. I've kind of gotten addicted to flying the strat ops, even though a lot of times they don't turn into big fights. In the last 2 months, I've only lost a couple of ships, and that was just in the last week. A lot of times, even in the big battles, 70-80% of the fleet makes it off the grid alive.
And complete tangent, I forgot to ask earlier. So are there kind of secondary trade hubs, kind of like frontline ones, or maybe particular corp that's particularly industry focused, or is it sort of a JITA and everywhere else relationship?
Well, the MJ deck is the big staging system that has our market in it. There are other hubs like 1DQ. 1DQ is the big goon market hub. They do the same thing. They have all their industry packed up there. I know Fraternity has one up in the north somewhere that they do all their staging out of. Generally, you want to keep to your own alliance in case the winds of politics change and suddenly all that stuff you had listed in another alliance's market becomes unavailable to you, and then you can't get your stuff out. So generally, people tend to stick to their own. We do deployments, like right now, Pandemic Horde is helping Fraternity in their conflict up in the Northwest against B2. So we've actually staged a lot of doctrine ships up in X-47. They have a big Keepstar up there that will fly fleets out of sometimes when we're going to go bash or defend structures or take territory up there. But for the most part, we have stuff that we maintain at home for stuff that we fly out of MJ, which is most of the fleets, and then we have these remote things. We've actually got some assets right now that are staged in perimeter to be able to defend a lot of the Tranquility trading structures that have been the subject of a lot of the conflict lately.
Yeah, that X-47 market is pretty well stocked, but as a member of Pandemic Legion, which doesn't have one of the main drone region hubs ourselves, most of what I do, my market trading in home space, is the MJ market or sometimes the NSI market, which is Northern Coalition's primary hub system.
Okay.
Yeah, I did post in the class questions a link to the picture that diagrams out the various areas, the different systems that are non-gated versus ESI gated versus rented. For some reason, I thought there were a lot fewer open systems, but I guess there's actually quite a number. And that's just like the central area. There's entire regions like Oasa that I'm stationed out of. That entire region is rented space.
So, from the first of all, from the industry side of things, what is, if anything, is the perception from within PanFam of what makes PanFam unique as compared to other Sov-Null corps that do industry?
I think overall, everywhere, everyone that's in Sov-Null does industry to a certain extent. And you can see that if you go into the map screen and highlight, pick system cost index for manufacturing or reactions, and it'll show in red all the systems that have high SCIs. And you can see all the little spots where, Fraternity has their little package of industrial systems, and Goons has theirs, and we have ours, and there's smaller things scattered throughout. So everybody's doing industry, but I think from a philosophical perspective, Goons, it's almost like they play the game to do war, and they do industry in order to do war. And Pandemic Horde, it's almost like, you play the game to build an empire, and you go to war to build that empire, and part of that empire is an industrial empire. Nothing affirmative that I can say to point to that, but that's just kind of the impression I get off the two different sides of the map.
I think for the most part, most alliances in terms of industry, it's roughly the same since over 20 years. People have figured out the most effective ways of doing things. It's the culture and which people are your friends who you want to be flying with is the biggest difference. Like, if you don't like the people in your alliance, you're in the wrong alliance.
Do you have an impression of how Brave fits into this culturally?
Well, I mean, I'm in PL, and we've historically had fun bashing Brave over the years.
Sure.
They try to, I guess they tried. Well, Pandemic Horde is actually started as a way of, as an attempt to do what Brave does, and then the people who were running it ended up being better at doing what Brave does than Brave was.
Okay.
Yeah, politically, Brave is teamed up with Volta and Initiative and Goonswarm, all on the left side of the map. And on the right side of the map, you've got Pandemic Horde, Pandemic Legion, Fraternity, and Northern Coalition are the big players there. And then there's a package of small independent groups down in the south that generally keep to themselves and are generally left alone. We're kind of over time. I'm perfectly willing to hang out and answer more questions, but I have questions for you guys. Obviously, I bring a very certain set of expertise in terms of industry, but I've got a lot of people that would be interested in coming to talk to Uni about a myriad of other topics in high-sec land. What topics would you guys like to see covered in future installments of this if we brought other people in to talk?
Interest has been expressed in generally having more support for intermediate and advanced level industry classes. We're pretty good at basics right now. In terms of beyond that, there's actually not a lot of classes being done right now on mining stuff. Most of the mining stuff happens in game is just sort of mining fleets and done over comms there. So if somebody wanted to talk about things from a more miner's perspective, I expect there would be interest. Similarly, there's room for intermediate or advanced trade classes. We're pretty well covered on basic trade. We're pretty well covered generally for PI. I'll let Weah speak to whether there's anything in particular he thinks would be helpful there, and I'll let others speak to things that they think might be of interest.
Things like, story time from the history of Sov-Null to who are the different players, what it's like to fly a Rorqual, how do you manage large numbers of accounts,
Yes,
what's it
that.
like running a corporation in Sov-Null, kind of topics like that I'm fishing for to see who might be a good person to invite to talk in the future.
Any of those things would be of interest.
I like the
Definitely.
idea of history stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. For me, managing multiple accounts and characters effectively and navigation, like what's it like to actually live in and move through Sov-Null? How does it differ from NPC Null or HiSec or anything like that?
First of all, I ignored Seamus's question on the channel, so let me answer his, and then I'll circle back to traveling around Sov-Null. How often do big Sov changes happen currently? Is it more or less static at the moment, and only when goons get bored and start a war does things kick off? Fraternity has 261 systems. Horde has 252. Goon Swarm has 132. It's vast numbers of systems, and while there might be some activity on the fringes, the core systems don't change a lot. The big moves are going to be when you see things like the initiative decides to leave Goon Swarm. They're still working together, but now they're not part of that alliance specifically anymore. So that divided Goon territory from, I think, 140 systems down to half and half.
They didn't really make an actual change. They just said they were doing something different.
Well, there you go.
There was a big war that evicted the Fire Coalition at the beginning of this year. They consolidated with B3.
Yeah, or Bro anyway. They're living in Broland.
Yeah, so it does happen, but the core systems, goons have been in 1DQ for how many decades now? Literally.
Yeah, decades.
I think it's since 2016 or so.
Goons have been around since a long time.
And I'm sorry, somebody had another question and now I've forgotten what it was. Can you react?
With mining ones?
If it was me, it was
moving
the topic
around.
of navigation, yeah.
So there are these things called Ansiblex gates. They are like toll bridges. They are built by players, maintained by players, and destroyed by players. You can only have one per system. So they will build entire Ansiblex networks to get from point A to point B. Generally, it turns a 20 jump trip into a 6 or 7 jump trip. They have to be fueled with liquid ozone, I believe. And when you fly through, you pay for that ozone. So frigates are cheap. Dreadnoughts are very expensive. And when the fuel runs out, the gate shuts down, which is always
The owner sets a fee per unit of ozone, and it consumes a number of units based on the mass of the ship, like he said.
And just in terms of scale, like some frigate, are we talking 100,000, 10 million, like per jump?
No, 10,000 or so.
Okay. So it's not a huge
That's
tax.
max. It might actually be 5,000 for small stuff.
Okay.
You're not allowed to jump caps through it. It's worth using the antiplexus rather than taking another 15 minutes to get to where you're going to be.
Yeah, I
Sure.
posted a quick screenshot in the class questions there. All those green lights show all the different Ansiplex gates that they maintain, they've built, they keep fueled across the areas that I have access to, which include, PAM-FAM, Fraternity, Northern Coalition. The other way to get around nullsec is with Titan bridges. And this is where somebody who has a Titan pilot creates a bridge. They have a module, they right-click, they activate it, and instead of jumping to another system, they create a bridge. So the entire fleet will stack up on the Titan, will all be 500 meters off the Titan, and when the Titan activates the bridge, you have 2.5 minutes to right-click on the Titan and say, jump to this system. And so not only does it get you to this system, but it gets you on grid with the Sino that he's bridging to. And so you can light that Sino in the middle of a massive fight and have suddenly 250 ships jump into that flight and be right there in the middle of the battle, which is always fun. Waiting a minute for traffic control lag to clear, and then wait another 30 seconds for your grid to load in, and then realize that you're in 10% tie-dye, and it's going to take you another 30 seconds to actually lock somebody up. So it's like this very intense moment that's playing out in slow motion.
What is tie-dye? Sorry.
Time dilation. It's how EVE nerds pretend like the system isn't just slow and laggy.
Okay.
CCP set it up so that if there's too much going on, the game automatically slows itself down instead of lagging because of things break down. So it has to get really bad before it lags because the game is starting to break. I've been in fights where that happens, but it's much worse than when it's just slowing down to 60% speed because of how much is going on.
As a new player, it's nice because it gives you a little bit of time to look and think. You just have to calm yourself down and realize, oh, if I click this module, it's going to take 10 seconds before it even starts to activate, just because every 1 second tick now takes 10 seconds to execute.
Perfect time to make a tea.
Well, it is a little bit of drama as you're flying Logi and you target that person up and you're watching, and the shields drop down, watching, finally lock them up. You hit the armor repper and you're waiting, and it's like, well, are they going to live or are they already dead? I don't know yet.
Did you mention SMT and EVE Preview and Intel channels in the Sov-Null Corps?
We do have Intel channels similar. EVE Uni has an Intel channel as well. our Intel channel is constantly chattering. I'm just looking at it now, and in the last 5 minutes, there's been about 8 or 9 reports of different people in different systems, just because when you're talking 200 systems, there's always somebody moving in or out of a wormhole or looking for content someplace. And I'm sorry, what were the other things you mentioned there?
Evo Preview, which is software that makes it easier to multi-box.
Yeah, I know it exists. I haven't ever tried it out. Generally, when I'm multi-boxing, it's only a couple of chips in space, and if it's more than 2, it's because they're Sinos, and there's really not much to do on a lit Sino account.
Yeah, the main thing that it does is put preview windows of your other accounts on screen and let you have set hotkeys to quickly switch to one account or another. So if you see something in the small preview window, you can immediately switch to it.
So it's still within TOS. It's still one client, one input.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like
It doesn't
would
break.
Yeah, the big thing that it's not allowed to do is you can't just have half of your window be one account, but let you have the buttons to activate the modules of another account. That's one thing it's not allowed to do.
Yeah, well, that's the art of multi-boxing, right? How many screens do you have? How many things can you look at? How quickly can you jump between them? How can you do all the tricks like assisting drones or fleet warping, to manage multiple things all at once? Like having a mining fleet that, when somebody shows up in local that you don't like, you can fleet warp the entire thing to a bookmark right on the station so that you're quickly under tether for all your ships. Things like that almost look like botting but are using legitimate game mechanics to control a lot of different accounts at once. For me, it's a lot of Alt-Tab and then start a bunch of industry jobs, and then Alt-Tab to the next one and start a bunch of industry jobs, and then Alt-Tab to the next and do a bunch of PI, industry stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that too. It's not uncommon for me to have 2 characters in a fleet fight, but the third or fourth or whatever, that's always a capital pilot. So that capital ships don't require a huge amount of input.
Yeah, I'm training up a second Logi pilot to try to multi-box across the 2 screens, but generally it's, flying one pilot with one screen, and then if we're not doing anything or we're waiting, I'll fire up some industry or reset some PI planets on another screen while we're waiting for stuff to happen.
Yeah, most often when I have a bunch of characters all in space at once, they're all flying Mackinaws.
Hulks are more fun. They also warp faster.
Hulks are not more fun when you're flying as many as I've flown.
This is true too.
I haven't flown a mining barge in 2.5 years, but I've sold dozens of them.
How bubble heavy is, I guess, pandemic space in particular? That's a hot topic in the pocket.
There's always a gate camp in VSP. which is like the one spot that they love. I don't know why. It's, I guess, a main thoroughfare. But aside from that, gate camps are pretty rare just because if they're really being obnoxious, a home defense fleet will either standing fleet will go kick them out, or if they're really big, we might ping a home defense fleet and put that together and go punt them. As far as like interdictors, there's interdictors all over the place. Somebody trying to get a cheeky kill here and there. But you know, that's part of EVE, part of PvP.
But it sounds like there aren't just anchored bubbles randomly all over the place, requiring use of bookmarks rather than like overview navigation.
Let's please not try to get our guest speakers to inadvertently get dragged into internal Uni politics.
Oh no, there was no argument in my question. I'm sorry, that was not meant to be suggesting a point of view.
Not necessarily you, just before someone else jumps in and someone else jumps in.
Yeah, for sure.
I've heard of people bubbling, to protect like a mining fleet in a rented system. I don't fly around that much when I'm not in either a strat op or home defense kind of fleet. And there it's, obviously it's a strategic thing. Things are playing out. A fight is happening. Generally, when I'm on dock to go from point A to point B, it's a jump freighter from tether to tether. So I'd gladly defer to someone else to answer that.
My observation over the past 3.5 years or so that I've been in PanFam has been that most gates are only really bubbled if there's an organized crabbing op, or sometimes if it's some guy ratting, but most of the time if it's only bubbled if it's an organized mining fleet or something like that.
Okay, so general navigation is still often just going to be kind of gate to gate sort of thing. You're not necessarily warping to celestials and descanning and that sort of thing, unless you're very nervous.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll be in fleet and they'll just say free burn to this destination, and it's 6 jumps out. Everyone just takes off gate to gate as quick as you can, best speed there, and if somebody gets tackled along the way, then we might stop and kill whoever. But generally, because it's a vast area of blue space there, it's not like the pocket where you're trying to protect from outsiders sneaking in.
Roger.
All right, any other questions today?
All right, well, thank you very much, Raveneye, for coming and speaking today. We really appreciate you taking the time, and it's great to chat with you again. For everyone else, we will be trying to do more Q&A events going forward, so please keep an eye out for these events to show up on the calendar.
If you have questions that you come up with later, don't be afraid to reach out in Discord. That's usually the best way to get a hold of me. Always eager to help out the Uni. The Uni helped me quite a bit over the years, so I'm glad to return the favor.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.